Hello. I'm gonna go ahead and get started because I have limited time. Thank you all for the host. Lexi, Riddy, Terry. Thank you so much. My acne is horrible, but I don't care. I'm getting home. We're gonna read. We're gonna raise maybe, well, it's up to you. We're gonna maybe raise money for Play to Beat Brain Cancer. And we're going to jump into the mystery of the Ivory Charm. Before our lovely friend V. Budkey goes live in about an hour. With her best friend Holland. Also raising money for ALS. Also a great cause. If I can... and also, we've had some discrepancies in our follower goal. So we are 2 away from the giveaway, which I don't remember what the command is for that. Yeah, okay. That's right. So that's still a thing that's happening. And I still need to get all my stuff out and figure out what we are giving away. But we will be giving a Nancy Drew book away when we reach 150 followers, and we were 2 away. We were 1 away, but I guess somebody unfollowed. So we're 2 away. But that's fine. So, what happened to the last thing here? Oh, Rye, the abusive father figure person who's also abusive to elephants, has captured Koya, our star of this book. They went to a party at Mrs. Dreyfus Winterhouse's manor. I don't remember why. They're trying to figure out what's going on with Miss Allison and some dude named Steve. But I don't really remember. So, without further ado, let's just jump into it. Chapter 16, Inside the Coffee Pot. And I got some coffee here. That's not very good. Shortly after 11 o'clock, Nancy and her father returned home from the moving picture show. As they ran the car into the garage, they noticed that all was quiet in the room above. No light burned. For once, Koya went to bed early, the lawyer commented. Mrs. Gruen must be asleep too, for her room is dark. Both Nancy and her father were weary, and they soon retired, never dreaming that any harm had befallen Koya. The following morning, after Mr. Drew had gone to his office, the housekeeper requested Nancy to go to the garage to find out why the boy had failed to come for his breakfast. Like as not, he's still sleeping, Hannah said irritably. He sits up half the night studying. It's no wonder he can't get up in time for breakfast. Koya is usually so prompt, Nancy answered. I'm sure he retired at a reasonable hour last night. Well, I wish you'd see what is keeping him. If he isn't here in 5 minutes, he'll eat a cold breakfast. Nancy mounted the stairway leading to the garage room and knocked on Koya's door. Receiving no response, she knocked again, and then, after listening for a second, opened the door a crack and peered inside. Why, Koya hasn't slept in his bed, she exclaimed aloud. Quickly entering the room, she looked about in amazement. The bed covers had not been disturbed, revealing that the lad had failed to spend the night in his room. The nearby table was cluttered with textbooks and papers, the latter stained with a great blotch of ink from an overturned bottle. A chair, too, had been upset. A handkerchief lay on the floor. Nancy picked it up and sniffed at it suspiciously. Drugs, she murmured. Next, the girl's attention was drawn to a footprint near the doorway. It had been made by a large, muddy shoe. Nancy knew that Koya did not wear such a big size. "The boy has been kidnapped," she thought. "While we were all away from the house last night, someone came here, drugged him, and carried him off." Nancy raced madly back to the kitchen to tell Hannah what had occurred. "Koya's been kidnapped!" she cried. Now she cares. Mrs. Gruen's mixing spoon clattered from her hand to the floor. "Yes, come and see for yourself. The signs of a struggle are unmistakable." Hannah followed the girl to the garage room. What the heck? Now we're calling her Hannah instead of Mrs. Gruen? When this book series is like renowned for continuing to call somebody Mr. or Mrs. whatever. Hannah followed the girl to the garage room and readily acknowledged that the evidence had been correctly interpreted. "This is dreadful, Nancy! Who could have done such a thing?" "I have a suspicion, but of course no evidence." "We must call the police at once." "This isn't a case for the police, in my opinion. I'll tell Dad what has happened. He'll know what to do." Taking the car, Nancy drove directly to her father's office. The secretary informed her that Mr. Drew would not be in until after luncheon. "This is his regular day at the municipal court, you know." "Oh, I had forgotten," Nancy returned in disappointment. "I'll drop in again this afternoon." Slowly, she walked back to the parked automobile, seriously considering her next move. "Nancy!" a voice called. "What are you doing downtown so early in the morning?" She turned about swiftly, and her face brightened as she recognized Bess and George. It was the latter who had spoken. The two girls were heavily laden with packages, mute evidence that they had been shopping. "You look as if you were having trouble, Nancy," Bess observed. "Anything wrong?" "Just about everything. Koya has been kidnapped. I can't reach my father, and I feel that something should be done immediately." "Have you called in the police?" George asked. "No, I'll do that only as a last resort. I've decided to drive out to the Allison property and see if I can find Jasper Bat. I have a feeling he may know something of the matter." "May we go?" Bess questioned eagerly. "I wish you would. Jump in and we'll be on our way." After a swift ride through the country, Nancy parked the car as near as possible to the ruins of the old house, and then the girls walked the remaining distance. They were relieved to see Jasper Bat busy with a rake cleaning up the debris, for they had feared that he might not be available. "I scarcely know how to approach that man," Nancy whispered nervously. "He may decide that I'm an enemy again and attack us with a rake." "We'll be on our guard," George declared. "If he seems to be in an ugly mood, we can always turn and run." The girls quietly drew near. "Good morning, Mr. Bat," Nancy said pleasantly. The man looked up and scowled. "Well, what do you want?" he demanded impatiently. "Can't you see I'm busy?" "I'll take only a minute of your time, Mr. Bat. I want to talk to you about a boy named Koya." "I never heard of him. Go away and let me attend to my work." "Very well, if that's the way you feel," Nancy said, pretending to humor him. She turned as if to depart, then paused again. "By the way, Mr. Bat, did you ever recover those valuable papers you lost?" "No, I didn't," the watchman snapped, "but I know what became of them all right." "I suppose you lost them accidentally," Nancy said innocently. "Lost them? I should say I didn't. They were stolen by that no-good relative of mine. He did it to get even with me because Miss Allison gave me his job of taking care of the place. Before I came here, Pete was the watchman." "Pete?" Nancy inquired. "Peter Putnam," the man replied irritably. "Let me see, he lives near here, doesn't he?" Nancy probed. "Too near to suit me. His place is about 20 miles beyond Doverville. You won't find Pete living in a regular house, though. Not that fella. He's too stingy to build himself a decent place. He lives in an old barn that was standing on the property when he bought it." Nancy asked several additional questions, but Bat became suspicious that he was being pumped for information and lost all willingness to talk. The girls returned to the parked car without gleaning any new facts. "I'd like to drive on to Peter Putnam's place," Nancy suggested. "That is, unless you girls are in a hurry to get home." "Mother won't expect us for some time," Bess answered. "I'm in favor of pushing on to see his queer house." Half an hour's drive brought the girls within the general vicinity of the Putnam farm, and upon inquiry they were told to follow a winding, rutty lane which would lead them to their destination. The property was located nearly a mile from the main highway and consisted of a few acres of cleared land completely surrounded by dense forest. "This must be the place," Nancy commented, halting the car near a strange structure which resembled neither a barn nor a house. The queer, tumble-down building originally had been painted a brick red, but now appeared to be a washed-out pink. A porch had been erected at the front, and large windows were cut into the walls at uneven angles. An old silo, long since useless, adjoined the east side of the structure, while the west side supported a massive stone chimney. "Did you ever see such a crazy-looking house in all your life?" Bess giggled. "I wish I had a picture of it." As the girls alighted from the car, a stout, short man in black corduroy trousers, sleeveless leather jacket, and a misshapen, dirty felt hat emerged from the building. Removing a briar pipe from the corner of his mouth, he demanded gruffly, "Well, what can I do for you? I warn you before you say a word that I'll not buy anything." "We have nothing to sell," Nancy smiled, but she added shrewdly, "We might be willing to make a purchase." "Eggs or a chicken?" Nancy shook her head. "I should like to discuss a business matter with you. May I come in?" "All right," Peter Putnam consented gruffly. But the place ain't fixed up much." "We'll wait outside," Bess said hastily, speaking for herself and George. This seemed sketchy already. Nancy followed the farmer into the house and tried not to stare as she noticed its dirty condition. The huge rooms were nearly barren of furniture. A cook stove, a kitchen table, and a sagging cot comprised the main pieces. Peter Putnam drew up a box, offering it to Nancy in lieu of a chair. "What is it you're willing to buy?" he asked eagerly. "Perhaps I shouldn't have expressed it in just those words," Nancy countered. "I am searching for some papers which disappeared from an old house owned by Anita Allison. I am willing to pay well to recover the documents." Putnam eyed the girl cunningly, but he replied evasively, "Now what should I know about any such papers? Pete Putnam tends to his own business." "You are the former watchman at the Allison property. I thought you might be able to help me. As I said before, I'm willing to pay well to recover the documents." "Like as not that old rogue Jasper Batts stole 'em." "I think not." "How much are you willing to pay for the papers?" Putnam asked cannily. "Mind, I'm not saying I could get 'em back for you." "I might pay $25, Nancy offered. As she had anticipated, the sum sounded large to the miserly farmer. His face twisted into a grimace as he tried to decide whether or not to acknowledge that the papers were in his possession. "Well, if I learn anything about the documents, I'll let you know," he said after a long pause. Nancy had no intention of giving up so easily. But before she could think of a suitable response, the two were startled to hear the angry barking of a dog in the yard. At the same instant, Bess and George uttered a terrified scream. Nancy rushed to the window. An ugly white and brown hound had cornered the girls near the house, and with menacing snarls threatened to attack them. "Call off your dog!" Nancy cried to Putnam. "Quickly! Before he bites Bess and George!" Seizing a whip from a hook on the wall, the farmer ran out the door. Nancy attempted to follow, but in her haste tipped over an old coffee pot which stood on a sagging shelf near the window. It clattered to the floor, and the lid fell back to reveal a white object hidden inside. Bending down, Nancy picked up the coffee pot. She removed a thin sheath of folded paper. "What's this?" she thought, scarcely daring to hope that she had made an important discovery. With trembling fingers, she opened one of the papers and glanced at it. The document bore a fantastic gold seal. "These must be the missing Allison papers," she told herself. "What luck!" It required but an instant to make sure. Then she thrust the precious documents into an inner jacket pocket. She replaced the coffee pot on its shelf, substituting an old letter at hand for the important papers which she had taken. Hastily she left the house. In the meantime, Putnam had driven away the hound, permitting George and Bess to escape to the automobile. Nancy joined them there, sliding quickly into the driver's seat. We must get away from here at once, girls. If Putnam discovers I've taken the papers, he'll try to stop us. The papers stolen from Jasper Bat? Bess questioned eagerly. Nancy nodded, triumphantly tapping her jacket pocket. I have the documents here. Let's hurry to a secluded spot where we can learn what they reveal. End of chapter 16. Thank you for the host, Timo. That's a coffee cup, not a coffee pot. Yeah, I know. But it's coffee. It's not very good, but... Mud monster. Wonder why a mud monster would drug a kid. I didn't know a muddy footprint and a made bed was a struggle. Dang, Bess and George, she can be downtown wherever she wants to be. Quit the questioning, right? She's a strong, independent woman in the 30s. And we can just grab the rake so he can't attack us with a rake. Hi, Timo. How are you? I took all my pills this morning, not the best taste though. Thank you for saying that because it reminds me that I have not taken my pills. And I may have forgotten to do so yesterday. I think I did. So I really need to take them because if I forget and keep forgetting, then I start feeling sick. So thank you for saying that because I need to take my pills after this. Also, welcome for joining. Also, Terry or somebody who notices, will you let me know when V goes live? Because we could do a raid. So I'm gonna, keep streaming until she goes live. And then we can raid her. Not that we're gonna have, very many people to raid, but it's fine. I have 4 now, it's hard to remember which one. Yeah, I get you. I have 3, and now I'm gonna have 4 because I just went to the doctor's and got prescribed an anti-inflammatory for my hip, which, that sounds great, because I'm sure a lot of the pain from my hip is caused by inflammation, so. And I got a diagnosis, so that's good. It's actually what I thought it was. So, I'm kind of relieved, because it's not... I mean, I'm not going to have surgery or anything like that, because that's ridiculous, but I'm going to do physical therapy. I already read that. Okay, let's continue. Thank you, Terry. Okay, I guess I could also pay attention to my phone, because it should come up on my phone, so... Okay, chapter 18. No, 17, I'm sorry. We just skipped 17. A vital document. Several miles farther down the road, Nancy drew up beneath the shade of an ancient oak, preparing to examine the papers which had been found in Peter Putnam's coffee pot. Isn't it a shame we didn't bring along a lunch? She commented regretfully. This is an ideal spot for a picnic, and I'm as hungry as a polar bear. Would you be satisfied if I should offer you a peanut butter sandwich and a slice of chocolate layer cake? Bess asked, smiling. I would be. Heck yeah. Would I be satisfied? What a question! But you can't conjure up anything like that. Oh, can't I? Bess laughed, reaching into the back seat of the car and lifting out a filled paper sack. Here's a loaf of sliced bread, a jar of peanut butter, and a huge cake fresh from the bakery. I was taking the things home when George and I met you in front of your father's office. How convenient. What will your mother say if we eat up the family provisions? Nancy laughed. Oh, Mother gets hungry herself sometimes, giggled Bess. We'll replace the items before we return home. In high spirits, the girls spread a blanket under a nearby tree and prepared for a feast, such as it was. We have no knife, Bess exclaimed in dismay. I never thought of that. How can we spread the sandwiches? We'll use a nice clean stick, Nancy chuckled. That willow tree should supply one. Are you serious, Nancy? We'll use it, we can break the cake into big hunks, George added. This will be fun. We'll use our fingers for everything. While her chums labored over the sandwiches, Nancy opened the sheaf of documents, studying them eagerly. Okay, but are they really using a stick to spread peanut butter on bread? That is not okay. I don't approve. Don't keep them a secret, Bess protested. Did you get the right papers? I'm sure I did. Some of these appear to be written in an Indian language, but others are in English. Is Koya's name mentioned? George asked, peering over Nancy's shoulder. I haven't seen it yet. Oh, yes, here it is. Oh, it's just as I suspected all along. Nancy sprang to her feet and, to the amazement of her chums, executed a little dance. Tell us what it's all about, Bess pleaded impatiently. It's not fair to keep us in suspense. Either hand over that paper or reveal what it contains. Nancy instantly grew sober, and sinking down on the grass, she spread out the English document so that her chums could read it over her shoulder. I can't make a thing of it, George complained. The writing is too cramped. It says here that Koya is the direct heir of a former ruler of an Indian province called... Oh dear, I can't even start to pronounce the place. Don't try, Bess said. Just give us the important details. As a babe, Koya was spirited away from his native land. Oh, I suspected it from the very first. Why was he taken away, and by whom? George questioned, trying to read the paper for herself. Nancy studied the writing for several minutes. Girls, this is a shock. Koya was deprived of his throne through the work of Anita Allison. Miss Allison? George exclaimed incredulously. But these papers belong to her. Why did she not destroy such incriminating evidence? I think I can answer that, Nancy said thoughtfully. Rye gave these papers to Jasper Bat, who was to deliver them to Miss Allison. Before he was able to do so, they were stolen by Peter Putnam. Naturally, if Miss Allison had received the documents, it's very likely she would have destroyed them immediately. But how did the woman become involved in such a disgraceful affair? Bess mused. One guess is as good as another, Nancy said. But I judge it was through her interest in mysticism. At any rate, whatever her original motive may have been, she plotted to raise Iyama Togara to the throne in place of Koya. That was a typo. It's an R, not an F. This paper reveals that Miss Allison, working with Rai, kidnapped Koya. In return for making Togara a Raja, they received as their reward a priceless royal treasure. The natives were led to believe that the infant Koya had been devoured by a tiger. Hence, they were willing to accept the new ruler. It sounds fantastic, Bess declared. Rai couldn't have received very much of the treasure, George commented. At least he appeared poor when we found him. I imagine that Miss Allison kept the bulk of the loot for herself, Nancy said. And just think, we helped her remove it from the secret tunnel. Secret tunnel! Brian must be a stupid fellow to accept such an arrangement, Bess remarked. One would think he would be inclined to protest. He is no match for Miss Allison, that's certain, Nancy agreed. I suspect the woman kept him satisfied by giving him the ivory charm. But why is the trinket so highly prized? This document explains that the charm originally belonged to Koya's parents. It was one of the most cherished pieces in the family treasure, and was believed to bring luck and health to the wearer. Rai set great store by the charm, Bess nodded, but he made a sad mistake when he gave it to you, Nancy. Yes, Rai is sorry already that he parted with it. Unless I'm mistaken, Miss Allison will regret that she ever heard of that lucky piece before we're through with our case. It may turn out to be her unlucky piece, Bess chuckled. There's one thing that worries me, Nancy said thoughtfully. I believe that Koya has been kidnapped by Rai. Surely the man can be traced, George replied. He has probably gone back to the circus. Harm may come to Koya before we can reach him. I feel certain that the boy will never remain voluntarily with Rai. No, Bess agreed. He will try to return to you, for he was happy living at your home. Rai and Miss Allison are both afraid that Koya will learn of his true parentage, Nancy said so slowly. If they suspect that these papers have fallen into my hands, the boy's life may no longer be safe. You think they would be so heartless as to put Koya to death? Bess exclaimed in horror. I believe they might find a convenient means of ridding themselves of him. We must make every effort to find the boy before it is too late. The girls had been so intent upon their discussion that they had failed to note the approach of a small herd of cows pastured in the field. A low, angry snort gave them their first warning. Startled by the unexpected noise, the girls scrambled to their feet. Hurriedly, they gathered up the blanket and picnic things. As the unfriendly leader of the herd moved swiftly toward them, Nancy and her chums rolled under the wire fence which marked the boundary line of the field. "Just in time!" Bess exclaimed. "That big red one meant to run after us." Nancy abruptly paused and shook the blanket. "My papers!" she cried. "Did either of you pick them up?" "Why, no," George answered. "Didn't you?" "I was so startled I don't remember. I thought I did." The girls hastily retraced their steps to the fence. Just beyond, lying in plain sight, were the documents. "Nancy, you can't get them now," George cried in alarm, comprehending her chum's intention. "You'll be injured." "I'm not going to lose those papers," Nancy replied grimly. Jerking away from George's restraining hand, she rolled under the fence and moved swiftly toward the herd. Do these cows have horns or something? I guess they do, otherwise I wouldn't think they're that dangerous. Okay. Spreading peanut butter with a stick. Classy. Chapter 18. Discouraging Days. Snatching up the precious documents from the ground, Nancy raced back to the fence. George and Bess aided her to crawl through the wires. "I guess those cows weren't as vicious as they looked," Nancy laughed shakily, as she carefully placed the papers in her jacket pocket. "Anyway, I had a bad fright about the documents, and it served me right for being so careless." The girls were soon on their way back to River Heights. In approaching the Allison property, Bess drew attention to an oncoming auto which had turned into the side road leading to the burned house. "Few persons ever travel that way," Nancy said thoughtfully. "Do you suppose Miss Allison was in the car?" "I couldn't tell so far away," Bess returned. "Now that I know she is involved in the plot against Koya, I must do everything in my power to locate her," Nancy continued. "Miss Allison ignored my letter and is making every effort to avoid me." "It will only take a minute to stop and see who this person is," George suggested. Nancy turned into the side road and soon drew up beside a sedan which had been parked near the burned house. The girls walked rapidly along the well-worn path until they came to the familiar clearing. There, two men could be seen talking with Jasper Bat. "I've never seen either of them before," Nancy commented. "I wonder why they're here." With one accord, the chums moved forward until they could catch snatches of the conversation. It developed that the strange men were agents of the Reliance Insurance Company, sent by the local office to investigate the cause of the recent fire. "Miss Allison is eager to have the claim settled as soon as possible," the girls heard Jasper Bat say urgently. "I can understand that," one of the agents replied dryly. "Unfortunately for Miss Allison, the claim will not be settled, and she may consider herself fortunate if she avoids prosecution." "What do you mean by that?" Bat demanded gruffly. "What has she done?" "Our investigation discloses that this house did not catch fire accidentally. It was deliberately burned." "You can't prove it." "Yes, Mr. Bat, our evidence will stand up in any court. You can't show that Miss Allison or anyone connected with her set fire to the house. It was probably done by a prowler." "We are not through with the case," the insurance man replied grimly. "By the way, Mr. Bat, we have come here today to ask you a few questions. Where were you at the time the fire started?" "Hey, that sounds familiar. Where were you at the time the fire started?" "Look here," the watchman cried furiously. "You can't hang this thing on me. I don't know anything about it. I told you my idea of the fire. The house was burned up by a prowler." Chancing at that moment to glance up, Jasper Bat observed Nancy and her friends. His ruddy face became kindled with the light of an evil inspiration. "Question those girls if you want to know who started the fire," he exclaimed. "They're always snooping about this place. I suspect that they were the ones who struck me over the head and stole my papers." At mention of the word papers, Nancy glanced uneasily at her companions. How well she knew that should the lost documents be found upon her person after such an accusation, explanations would not be easy to make. However, she walked boldly forward to speak with the insurance agents. Mr. Bat is not telling the truth, she said coolly. My chums and I have no knowledge of how the fire started. The day before the house was destroyed, we found Mr. Bat in an unconscious condition inside the building. He told us then that he had been struck over the head by an assailant who took his papers. That's the truth, Bess added earnestly. Later, Mr. Bat began to accuse everyone of stealing the documents. Incidentally, he mentioned an old enemy, Nancy supplied adroitly. A former watchman at this house named Peter Putnam. The two, I am told, were bitter rivals, and there was some bad feeling between them because Putnam was discharged by Miss Allison. It's a trumped-up story, Bat cried furiously. The two insurance men had been impressed by Nancy's straightforward manner. They had dealt with persons of Jasper Bat's type before, and did not place great stock in the man's tale. What is your name, miss? One of the agents inquired. Nancy Drew. You may have heard of my father, Carson Drew. We certainly have. If you're his daughter, there's no need for explanations. Then we're free to return home? Nancy smiled. What? What are you saying, Lexi? Did I miss something? Certainly. We may need you later to offer evidence in the case, but in that event, we'll call it your home. Thank you, Nancy said. You certainly walked out of that trouble adroitly, George praised. Yeah, everyone says... Wasn't someone going to redeem the picture last stream? Oh, yeah, that's my friend Sarah. She said something about her card. She's getting a new card in the mail or something, so... So, yeah, we'll see. I'm not gonna, force her to donate. But if she doesn't donate, how about I donate and then force her? Yeah, we'll talk about it in a second. I was afraid it might be discovered that you had the missing papers in your possession. Jasper Bat was too stupid to think of such a possibility, Nancy chuckled. No, you're fine. You're fine. After taking George and Bess to their homes, she halted at her father's office to report to Mr. Drew the adventures of the day. He was deeply impressed with the documents which she spread before him and suggested that she show them to Professor Stackpole. That's an excellent idea, Nancy agreed. I'll telephone now for an appointment. After a brief wait, she was connected with his residence, only to be informed that the man had left the city for a weekend visit. How disappointing, Nancy commented as she carefully placed the documents in her father's safe. Now I must wait until he returns. In the meantime, we'll make every effort to locate Koya, Mr. Drew said. Unless we find him again, your papers will not be of much value. Both Nancy and her father were confident that it would not prove difficult to trace Koya. Their first act was to communicate with the Bingleton Circus. They were disappointed to learn that Rye had not returned to his old position. Thinking that possibly the man had sought work with another traveling troupe, they made a complete canvass of the state. No one had heard of Rye. The search will prove more difficult than I anticipated, Mr. Drew admitted. Obviously, Rye suspects that we may try to trace him and is hiding deliberately. When Professor Stackpole returned from his trip, Nancy lost no time in calling at his home. After relating the details of Koya's disappearance, she placed the important documents in the tutor's hand. He pored over them for nearly an hour. This is indeed amazing, he declared. Amazing! Yet I cannot say that I'm greatly surprised. From the first, Koya impressed me as a lad of high caste and unusual ability. Then you believe the documents to be genuine? Nancy inquired eagerly. Yes, I do not question them. In securing these papers, Miss Drew, you have accomplished a remarkable bit of detective work. I feel confident that Miss Allison is the person responsible for placing Iyama Togara on the throne. she said. These papers practically prove it. However, I should like to obtain an admission from Miss Allison's own lips. But will that be possible? I have a plan, Dr. Stackpole. Will you help me? I'll do anything in my power, Miss Drew. I'm very fond of Koya, you know. Then this is my scheme. By some ruse, invite Miss Allison here to your home. You might pretend to consult her about Indian mysticism. She will feel flattered at the invitation and accept it, I'm sure. And if she does accept it? Try to gain an admission from her that she helped to place Togar on the throne. I fear I haven't your ability as a detective. In this respect, you'll succeed where I would be certain to fail. Miss Allison would never talk frankly with me. She'll be flattered by your interest. The scholarly man nodded thoughtfully. The plan might be worth trying, he said. With your permission, I'll hide nearby and listen to the conversation, Nancy continued. If Miss Allison refuses to talk, then I'll step out and confront her with the documents. I shall attempt to make the appointment immediately, the professor promised. 2 days elapsed, and when Nancy received no word from the tutor, she began to fear that he had failed. Then one evening he telephoned her at her home. At last I have been successful in contacting Miss Allison, he reported. I made the appointment through my friend Mrs. Winterhouse. Miss Allison has agreed to call at my home on Tuesday of next week at 3 o'clock. Excellent, Nancy approved. I will arrive ahead of her. Impatiently, she counted the many days which would have to elapse before the scheduled interview, and could not help but fret at the delay. During them, she devoted all of her thoughts and energy to Koya's cause, or so it seemed to Ned Nickerson. You need a little relaxation, he insisted. Why not attend the Omega Chi Epsilon house party and dance at Emerson this weekend? I don't feel a bit like dancing, Ned. Thank you for the invitation, though. A day or so of fun would do you good, Nancy. I'm not in the mood for it. I keep worrying about Koya. Why not invite another girl? You know I'd never do that, Ned answered reproachfully. You're the only girl I want to take. There's one place you may take me, Nancy suggested. Where? To the circus at Royalton. I saw it advertised yesterday. Ned groaned. We've attended every circus now within 10 counties. I'm just about fed up with animals. So am I, Nancy admitted, but I keep hoping that sometime I'll find Rye. I'll take you, Ned promised reluctantly, but I'm sure it'll be another wasted trip. The prediction was a true one, for Rye was not located at Royalton or at any of the other circus towns which the couple visited. Occasionally, when Ned rebelled, George and Bess would accompany Nancy upon her searching tours. One afternoon, as the 3 girls were returning after a discouraging day spent in the city some distance from River Heights, a large cross-country bus sped past them. Look! Look! Bess cried, pointing toward a window of the vehicle. Koya and Rye are there! I caught a glimpse of them! Nancy did not question the identification. She quickly turned the car in the narrow road, but the bus had disappeared in a cloud of dust. You'll never catch it! Bess exclaimed anxiously. Yes, I will, Nancy said grimly, pressing her foot firmly on the gasoline pedal. I must! End of chapter 18. Okay, yes. Hi, Lexi. And yes, everyone uses the word adroitly, don't you? Adroitly. Adroitly! Welcome for Timo hugging Terry. I'm glad you're streaming now. I need something to listen to while sorting all my laundry. I know, right? That's what the Nancy Drew fam is good for. We all stream so everybody can get their laundry done. That should be our tagline. Nancy Drew fam. Where you stream to do... I don't know. Nancy giving him the not-so-subtle hint to move on. Yeah. If Sarah doesn't happen to pop in and donate by the end of the month, I will donate for you and get you that picture of Loki. But, I mean, I can draw you a picture of Loki anyways, but I want to donate to the cause, so I would be happy to do that. for you. Yeah, let's keep going. Chapter 19, The Missing Elephant. Soon the bus was overtaken, but Nancy was compelled to follow it until it made its regular stop at the next town. As a few passengers alighted, the girls eagerly scanned the faces of those still inside. "I don't see anyone who resembles Rye," Nancy said in disappointment. "He was sitting in a rear seat with a boy," Bess declared. "I'll step aboard the bus and see if they have changed seats." Yeah, nobody's gonna be weirded out by that. She was back again in a moment, looking decidedly crestfallen. "I don't understand how I made such a silly mistake. It's not Rye at all. Can you ever forgive me, Nancy, for starting you on such a wild chase?" "Of course, Bess, it wasn't your fault." "I'm awfully sorry. I was so certain that the man was Rye." "Don't give the matter another thought." Nancy laughed. "This isn't the first disappointment I've had, but I mean to find Rye and Koya yet." Later that evening, Ned called at the Drew residence to learn the outcome of the trip. Nancy admitted that it had been a failure. "I'm beginning to grow discouraged," she confessed. "You need a little cheering, Nancy," he said coaxingly. "Why not come to the university weekend dance at Emerson? It will be a real party. The fellows are abandoning the Omega fraternity house and turning it over to the girls until the night of the dance. Mrs. Howard is to act as chaperone." "I haven't any new party clothes to wear," Nancy said as she quickly thought of her wardrobe. "Just pack any old thing. No one will notice," remarked Ned, man fashion. I like that word, man fashion. "Much you know of fraternity weekends," Nancy retorted. "All the girls will come dressed in their best. They'll have a gown for every occasion. They'll not hold a candle to you, no matter what you wear." "You're very flattering," Nancy laughed. "I suppose I could go." "Then it's settled," Ned interrupted before she had an opportunity to voice another objection. "I'll write Mrs. Howard and tell her to expect you Friday evening." Nancy did not regret accepting the invitation. By Friday, her enthusiasm had mounted to a high pitch, and as she motored with Ned toward Emerson University, she asked many eager questions regarding the planned festivities. "There'll be enough to keep you interested," Ned promised. "Teas and tennis and a swimming party, and then the big dance." Arriving at the fraternity house, Nancy found 20 girls already comfortably established. After meeting Mrs. Howard, a pleasant, motherly woman, she was introduced to her roommate, a shy, timid girl who confessed that she had never before had attended such an affair. "You'll love it," Nancy assured her. This sounds like a nightmare. The following day, the girls were rushed from one activity to another. Without making the slightest effort, Nancy became popular with everyone. Of course. She met so many new students that she could not remember the names of half of them. However, Ned's fraternity brothers remembered her, and that evening at the formal party held in the chapter house, they annoyed the young man exceedingly by constantly cutting in upon his dances. "I think you've danced with everyone in here except Basha," Ned complained good-naturedly to Nancy. "That's the punishment a fellow gets for bringing a good-looking girl." "Who's Basha?" Nancy inquired, paying no heed to the compliment. With a nod of his head, Ned indicated an Indian student, a handsome youth in evening dress who was standing at the opposite side of the room. "I'll bring him over if you'd like to meet him." "It might prove interesting," Nancy said. Ned soon regretted that he had ever made such a suggestion, for after Basha had been presented, he proceeded to monopolize Nancy's attention. He captured her interest by immediately mentioning the ivory charm which she wore. "It is a remarkable keepsake," he declared. "I have seen none to compare with it, even in the collections of the mighty Rajas of my country." The conversation continued at a furious pace, and poor Ned tried in vain to draw Nancy's attention to himself. She listened with an absorbing interest as Basha told of strange customs in India. The Hindu student, in turn, thought Nancy the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. It became increasingly clear to Nancy that Basha was suffering from a severe attack of love at first sight. At length, the young man could endure it no longer. "Nancy and I have this dance," he told the Hindu. "It's time for you to scram!" Scram? That's an English slang word meaning go, leave, depart. Unless you do, I'll be tempted to challenge you to a duel at sunrise. Very sorry, Basha apologized, smiling. He bowed to Nancy and moved away. Oh, that was Ned! I thought it was Basha. Oh my god, Ned! It's time for you to scram! Scram? So rude! Very sorry, Basha apologized, smiling. He bowed to Nancy and moved away. Ned was not the only person present who had noticed the Indian student's infatuation. Some of the girls had overheard a part of Basha's conversation and teasingly inquired if her ivory charm was responsible for such popularity. Soon Nancy found herself dubbed the girl with the ivory charm. She was not certain that she enjoyed the notoriety, for many persons asked to inspect the lucky piece. She was tired when a waltz announced the end of the dance. She went to her room, tumbled into bed, and did not awaken until the morning sunlight streamed in at the window. Her roommate was already abroad, and Nancy hastened to dress. Suddenly she became aware that the ivory charm was no longer about her neck. She tried to recall whether or not she had removed it the previous evening before retiring, but could not remember doing so. She searched the dresser, the bed clothing, her suitcase, and finally in desperation communicated her loss to the other girls. Everyone joined in the hunt, but the charm could not be found anywhere in the house. Do you suppose that foreign student, Basha, could have stolen it? A girl suggested. Oh no, Nancy exclaimed instantly. But he was deeply interested in the charm. Everyone noticed it, and you said yourself that he spoke of its value. Mrs. Howard, the chaperone, did not feel so confident that Basha was innocent. Unbeknown to Nancy, she telephoned the Hindu student, and after asking several rather pointed questions in regard to his knowledge of the charm, requested him to call at the chapter house as soon as possible. A little after 9 o'clock, Ned drove up hurriedly to the door and asked for Nancy. I've just heard about you losing your charm, he said quickly, but I'm sure Basha had nothing to do with the theft. The poor fellow is almost beside himself with worry. He thinks he is to be arrested. He's packing up his belongings now to leave the campus. I didn't accuse Basha, Nancy said in amazement. I know he didn't take the charm. Mrs. Howard telephoned to him, Ned explained. I suppose she meant well, but Basha thought he had been accused of the theft. He intends to run away before he's arrested. We must stop him, Ned. You're the only one who can explain to Basha, Nancy. That's why I came for you. I'll be ready in an instant. She ran back into the house for her hat, and bidding a hasty goodbye to Mrs. Howard and the girls, rejoined Ned. The couple drove swiftly to Basha's rooming place, only to be informed that the youth had departed. Which way did he go? Ned demanded. Down Fulton Street, toward the railway station. They resumed the pursuit, and a few blocks farther on, were gratified to glimpse the Hindu student trudging along with his heavy suitcase. Ned halted the car at the curbing. I didn't steal the charm, Basha cried, before either he or Nancy could speak a word. Let me go in peace, I beg of you. We don't want you to go, Basha, Nancy assured him kindly. It's all a mistake. You have found the charm? No, but Mrs. Howard didn't mean to accuse you of taking it. We all know you are an innocent. There is no need for you to run away. A tear trickled down Basha's cheek, and when he tried to express his gratitude, words failed him. You are very good, he murmured at last. Very kind. I will do all I am able to help you recover the charm, for now that it is gone, your good luck will end. I'm not so sure of that, Nancy replied. I've always been considered a lucky person, even before Rai gave me the charm. Rai? Basha inquired sharply. Yes, do you know him? Right, because every foreign person knows every other foreign person, right? Why am I dropping frames? I'm dropping frames rapidly. Is anybody else noticing this issue? Okay, it just settled down. Never mind. I mean, we got 5 minutes to go. It's doing it again. So, if I'm dropping frames, oh well. You know. Only casually. I've met him a few times. Last evening, he telephoned me. Ned and Nancy exchanged significant glances. Here, they thought, was an unexpected clue. Oops, why am I pulling my hair out? Was this after the dance? Nancy asked. Yes, he telephoned me at my rooming house. And by any chance did you mention my name? Basha was surprised at the question. Yes, I did, he admitted. I told him of your wonderful personality. And my ivory charm? Nancy prompted. I did mention it, I believe. I think that explains everything, Nancy said quietly to Ned. My bedroom at the fraternity house is on the first floor, and I slept soundly. I did not mean to reveal anything of importance, Basha said in alarm. What have I done? It isn't your fault, Nancy assured him kindly. However, I am afraid Bry has my charm. Tell me, where's the man now? I have no idea. He telephoned from a hotel and mentioned that he was leaving the city in an hour. Don't look so glum, Basha, Ned said. No one blames you. Jump in the car and we'll take you home. En route to the rooming house, the Hindu student assured Nancy over and over that he was heartsick at the outcome of the casual telephone call. He seemed especially downcast because he firmly believed that the girl's good fortune would desert her. Don't take the matter too seriously, Nancy urged him as they parted. I have faith I'll recover the charm. During the long ride back to River Heights, sometime later that day, neither she nor Ned talked a great deal. They both felt discouraged and blue. I guess the party was a flop after all, Ned said as Nancy alighted at her own door. No, it wasn't. I had a wonderful time. But you lost your charm. I'll recover it again. My first move will be to trace Rye. However, 2 days elapsed during which no word was heard of either Rye or the missing Koya. Mr. Drew had devoted many hours to the case, only to be confronted with defeat at every turn. Rye must have a secret hideout, he told Nancy. Otherwise, we'd surely locate him. At least we're still in touch with Miss Allison, Nancy returned, and I have the incriminating documents which will convict her. And this is the day of my appointment, you know. You must be very careful what you do or say, the lawyer cautioned. I fear you're getting into deep water. Not so deep that I can't manage to swim out, Nancy said confidently. A few hours later, en route to the Stackpole residence, she did not feel quite so courageous. She knew that Koya's future, as well as her own safety, might depend upon the outcome of her meeting with Anita Allison. Would she prove a match for the clever woman? My only chance is to work upon her weakness for mysticism, Nancy thought. I must play a part, and that part will require all my skill and cunning. End of chapter 19, and that's where we'll leave it today. Perfect timing. Hopefully, we will be able to raid the lovely V. Budke. What did I miss? I wish I could watch Twitch while sorting laundry, but my laundry room has no computer. Could you watch it on your phone? That's usually what I do. Man fashion. Dang, Ned, green-eyed monster much? Ned told her to hang out with him as well. Rude, not Dan. Wednesday? Yeah. Yep. That's why it was a very short stream. Drinks tons of caffeine so she can stay awake and play with Loki. Secret hideout hype. Hi, Riddy. Thank you for clapping. Let me go into Twitch and see if V is live. Who is up for a raid? Can you type... Does this work? Can you guys type Sesame in chat if you're up to raid V Budke? Also, you guys, she's not live yet. Heartless, do you like Panic at the Disco? I can't remember. We'll just chat until... Welcome for giving Alexi a hug, Timo. Stall for a few minutes. I can stall. We can raid to her channel anyways. It's fine, I'll stall. So, did you know Brendan Urie streams? Because he's live right now. He's streaming Life is Strange. And I looked on his channel. I did follow him. I'm not a huge Panic at the Disco fan. But that was because when I was younger, it was like either you liked Panic at the Disco or Fall Out Boy. And yeah, right? he was on my front page because he was streaming Life is Strange, so I went in. All the money he makes goes to charity. So that's pretty cool. And he's playing Liz. I think they're either in episode 4 or 5. But I thought that was awesome. Like, good for him for raising money, because he's gonna raise a lot of money, right? Because he's Brendan Urie. But then he has like 2,000 people watching right now, so he's bringing exposure to a great game. Like, awesome. Adroit. She says they're running late. I met his first cousin once. Oh. Huh. Interesting. Here. Okay, cool. Yeah, I thought people in the Nancy Drew fam would appreciate that. Because I feel like we have a lot of people who like Panic at the Disco. Riddy, do you know how late they're running? Like, do I have time to read another chapter? Should we just stall and chat? I have lots of text. And I gotta go to Walmart at some point. Wow, that's cheap. My prescription is $2.89. They just said they're running late. No clue on how late. Okay. Let me text her. Thank you guys for letting me know, though. She hasn't changed the title of her stream yet? Okay. Well, hopefully she can answer. My sister-in-law is going back to Cleveland today, so she was texting us about her flights. Do I have any... I don't think I have any announcements or anything, but, yesterday was just nuts. What else do I have to say? I mean, I guess I could read until she goes live, or I could just read another chapter and then we can raid when I'm done. How far am I? I'm pretty close to being done with the book. Remember, this is the original version, so it's longer. So it's like 216 pages, and I'm at 170 right now. So then if the next stream will probably be short. That's a great announcement. Yesterday was nice. It was sarcastic. Yesterday was nice, but she hasn't texted me, so I don't know. Here, let me take a poll if I remember how to do that. It's going to snow here. Whoa! Voting on Read or chat. Does everyone have V's phone number? I just do because of TwitchCon. I do because I got it when I had to take a break from Discord so I could keep in touch with her. About 15 minutes is what she says. So we definitely do have time for another chapter, but... I see 2 votes for read, 1 vote for chat. Terry, I don't know if you're still here. Do you have a vote for reading or chatting in the time we have left? Now I've got songs stuck in my head. Standing on the rooftops, everybody scream your heart out. And Lane Robs because he tried to give it to CJ and I was in the stream. Okay. Interesting. I have no one's phone number. Up on the roof. He hid it in a riddle. It was cute. He just gave it out on stream. Okay. Alright, we're gonna read another chapter, so. Okay, let's do another chapter. Let me turn the music back on. I think I was one of the few people in the room at the time. It was after someone's stream. Oh, okay. Alright, let's do this. Chapter 20, A Hypnotic Trance. Nancy was escorted into Dr. Stackpole's private study where she found him nervously pacing the floor. Ah, I'm glad that you have arrived early, he said in relief to Nancy. To tell you the truth, I'm beginning to wonder if we have made a wise move in inviting Miss Allison here. In what way do you mean? Something may go wrong. Then serious consequences may result if we have made a mistake. There can be no mistake, Dr. Stackpole. The documents in our possession conclusively prove her guilt. Yes, that is so. But if Miss Allison suspects that her true character has been exposed, she may resort to violence. I am afraid for your sake, Miss Drew. I'll be on my guard, promised Nancy. Just show me where I am to hide. Unwillingly, the elderly man indicated an alcove just off the study which served as a tiny conservatory. It was filled with palms and potted plants, offering an excellent hiding place where Nancy could hear and see everything without herself being visible. She chose a nook behind a large pottery vase. Scarcely had she secreted herself when the doorbell rang. Dr. Stackpole hurried to answer it. He was utterly unprepared for the sight which greeted his eyes. Miss Allison, wearing a long, flowing white costume and turban, with a jewel-bound look in her hand, entered the room as one walking in a trance. This way, the professor stammered, moving toward the library. He offered Miss Allison a chair, which she ignored. She stared at her host with a glazed expression in her eyes. You are interested in mysticism? She murmured, before the dazed teacher could speak. We are, I believe, of one spirit in this matter. I shall read that we may find communion together. With one arm outstretched in a grandiloquent gesture, she began to read from the jeweled volume. Nancy knew by the blank expression on Dr. Stackpole's face that the poor man was too stunned by the exhibition to comprehend a word, but by the time Miss Allison had finished the passage, he had recovered his usual poise. A beautiful quotation, Miss Allison, he said, but our time is short, and we must talk of India. Ah, yes, the woman sighed. India, the land of adventure and mystery. What tales I could tell of its glamorous rulers. Perhaps you could tell me of Iamo Togara, Dr. Stackpole suggested cautiously. I fear that the stories which filter to us in the West are but half-truths. The real story of how Iamo Togara became a great ruler has never been told, Miss Allison boasted. You would not believe me were I to say that I aided in placing him on the throne. Indeed I would, Dr. Stackpole answered quietly. The untimely death of the heir apparent, a youth named Koya, left the affairs of the province in a hopeless muddle, Miss Allison explained sadly, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. I was deeply grieved over his demise. I can imagine you were, Nancy thought scornfully. It's easy to see your tender heart is broken. The province was plunged into turmoil, Miss Allison continued. I knew that a good ruler would have to be found quickly if war were to be avoided. I decided to act. You understand that I was motivated entirely by my desire to aid the poor natives. Yeah, because they can't figure themselves out without the help of white people. Oh, certainly, certainly, Dr. Stackpole murmured, endeavoring to hide his contempt for the woman. Through various political and psychic connections, I was able to place Iamo Togara on the throne. And your reward? Dr. Stackpole inquired. For the first time, Miss Allison regarded him with a slight trace of suspicion. Nothing, she answered shortly. I did it because of my feeling for India. Dr. Stackpole attempted to encourage Miss Allison to reveal more, but as it became apparent that she was regarding his interest with distrust, he switched to another subject, speaking of a certain type of carved Indian vase, which had intrigued him. I have tried to buy such a vase at various art stores, he remarked, but I have been unable to locate one which pleases me. Miss Allison nodded understandingly. I know exactly the sort of work you mean, and it is difficult to secure. However, I have a friend, an Indian, who might be able to find the vase for you. You are very kind. I don't suppose your friend by any chance could be a circus man named Rye? Again, Miss Allison regarded the professor suspiciously. Certainly not, she replied stiffly. I have never heard of such a person. Hi, Boo. Hi, Boo-Boo. By this time, it was evident to Nancy that Miss Allison was entirely too wary to say anything which might involve her in the scheme to deprive Koya of his rightful inheritance. If the woman were to be compelled to confess, more drastic methods would have to be employed. Quietly, Nancy slipped from her hiding place, left the house by a side exit, and walked around to the front door where she rapped. Nancy is rapping, yo, yo, yo! A maid promptly admitted her and escorted her to the library. Sorry, that was really cringy. Immediately, the Drew girl began to act a part. She pretended to be greatly surprised to find Miss Allison at the teacher's home and apologized for intruding. We were just having a pleasant little chat about India, Dr. Stackpole said. Miss Allison is considered an authority upon the subject of mysticism. How interesting, Nancy exclaimed. I have always been deeply intrigued by that subject myself. In fact, some of my friends believe that I have psychic powers. Indeed, Miss Allison remarked disparagingly. Yes, Nancy continued glibly. I have always felt that I was endowed with the ability to look back into the past. Under correct conditions, I have faith that I could demonstrate this strange power. Psychic powers are far more rare than you think, Miss Allison said unpleasantly. Nevertheless, I'm certain I have this ability. If you wish, I'll prove it. The woman hesitated, and then before she could speak, Dr. Stackpole said quickly, By all means, Miss Drew. Such a demonstration should prove interesting. Lower the blinds, Nancy commanded. When the room was shrouded in semi-darkness, she said to Miss Allison, I must have your turban. This is nonsense, the woman complained as she unwillingly gave up the headgear. Placing herself in front of a dark velvet drapery, Nancy closed her eyes. She began to rock slowly back and forth, chanting in low, musical tones. At first, her words were unintelligible. Then she began quoting passages from the documents which she had taken from Peter Putnam. Miss Allison leaned forward, gripping the arms of her chair, her eyes dilated with fear. She tried to speak, but made only a choking noise in her throat. Nancy knew that it was time for the climax of her act. She took a step toward the woman, and her hand swept outward in a gesture of accusation. "You are the guilty person," she proclaimed. "You are the person who deprived Koya of his right to the throne and brought him to this country. Confess! Confess!" For an instant, Miss Allison seemed too stunned to move. Then she dropped down upon her knees before Nancy, sobbing wildly. Yes, I did it. I employed Rai to kidnap the boy that Yamatogara might be put upon the throne. I did it for India." "You kidnapped Koya because your reward was a precious treasure," Nancy corrected sternly. Before Miss Allison could make a response to this accusation, there came an unfortunate interruption. A telephone rang in the adjoining room. Miss Allison straightened. The look of fear left her face, and she became more composed. "I must answer," Dr. Stackpole murmured as the instrument continued to ring. Realizing that the spell was broken, Nancy expediently emerged from her trance. She had secured the confession which she sought. The professor would serve as a reliable witness against Miss Allison when the proper time should come. "Well, did my psychic demonstration convince you?" Nancy smiled. "It did. I don't suppose you remember much of what you said." Nancy was not compelled to reply, for Dr. Stackpole appeared in the doorway just then. "The call is for you, Miss Drew. Your father wishes to speak with you." Nancy hastened to the telephone. "What is it, Dad?" she asked hurriedly. "I really shouldn't have bothered you," the lawyer apologized. "I merely telephoned to learn if you are safe. Since you left, I've been worried." "I'm all right, Dad. Everything is going along splendidly. Only I can't take time to tell you about it now. I'll call you back in a few minutes." Nancy hung up the receiver and returned to the library. She paused in the doorway to stare in horror. Dr. Stackpole lay stretched out on the floor, unconscious. His head was bleeding from a deep wound caused by a heavy blow from a bookend. Miss Allison had disappeared! "That woman did this!" Nancy thought as she went over to the professor's side. She struck him with a bookend because she was afraid he would reveal what he had heard. While Nancy was trying vainly to raise the man to a sitting posture, the front doorbell rang. Instead of going to answer it, the girl called loudly for help. "Coming!" a masculine voice shouted. The next moment, Ned Nickerson ran into the room, only to stop short as he beheld the professor lying on the floor. "Dr. Stackpole is badly hurt," Nancy cried frantically. "At his age, such a blow may prove fatal. We must act quickly to save him." Wow, okay. That was chapter 20. Hi, Boo. What are you doing? Do you want to say hi? I guess V hasn't started yet. Thank you for clapping. Boo Boo, come here. Hi. Come here. Come say hi to people. Come here. Oh, she's not gonna be happy. Hi, everybody. Nancy uses, NLP to get suspects to confess confirmed. What is NLP? Nancy really does have powers. Hypnotic trance. Waits for all the lame stereotypes. Nancy rapping. Hello, Bo. Neuro-linguistic programming. Oh, okay. V went live. Oh, okay, awesome. Thank you. Perfect timing. Bye, Boo. I follow too many people who have cats, so I can't remember who has what breed of cat. I don't know what... I'm such a cat noob that I don't know the breeds, and I don't know what Boo is. So, raid time! Okay. Let's do this. Let's raid V-Budkey. Let me get her up here. Although, we should probably wait until she is, like, live. I'm hearing noises. Oh, thank you for unlocking the door. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for sesaming. We will unlock the door to go raid V. I'm waiting for her to come on stream. So, just a reminder, throughout the month of May, we're going to be raising money for Play to Beat Brain Cancer, which is a charity out of Kansas City, and they raise money for fighting brain cancer with gaming. And that was inspired by somebody they lost who loved gaming, loved board games, I think, in particular. But they do board games, tabletop, video games, all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was a cool way to raise money for this month. Also, May is Brain Tumor Awareness Month, which obviously you guys know is important to us because Keegan has a brain tumor. That's not active, thank God. But still a very important thing that happened in our lives, and I'd love to get back to those who are suffering, because it sucks, and I can't imagine. Like, we got really lucky. His tumor was benign, and he had surgery, and it went great. Technically, he still has a tumor, and he'll have to monitor it for the rest of his life. But, you know, like, in comparison, I just can't imagine how hard it must be to go through something where your tumor is not benign, and you have cancer, and you have to figure out what you're gonna do to fight it. So it's important to me that I give back in some way, and if I can do this for them, that would really be great. And with all of your help so far, we've raised $15, which, you know, every little bit counts, every little bit helps, and I really appreciate it. Our goal is 100. If we don't make it, that's okay. But if we do, we can, you know, move the goal forward. So that's my spiel for Play to Beat Brain Cancer. I also, when I found it on Tiltify, I was pretty excited because they go to the Planet Comic Con in, it's usually like March, April in Kansas City, and that's the con that we've been to, and we had a lot of fun, and I cosplay as Leia on Hoth, so I had a lot of fun with that. It was very cool. And I didn't realize they had been there. So it sounds like they go pretty regularly, and that's pretty cool. So V is live. So they're on stream now. So let's go raid V Buttkey. Here's the raid message. So copy and paste. We're gonna go raid V Buttkey. Thank you all for being here. I love you so much. I'll hopefully see you tomorrow. We're gonna raid. Bye.